my earbuds here so I can hear you.
Hey, Stephen.
Okay, I'm all set.
There might be some confusion given that everyone is using Nick Leone's link here. So maybe we'll do some introductions once we're ready to get started. But I did notice that that link was only sent for applicant.
You know, we'd actually sent all independent links. Each one of you should have received one in your email.
I did not. I know I saw that email go out, Stephen, to direct someone to provide links, but I never received one unless I wasn't looking in the right spot.
Yeah, I think I CC'd you on the email going out to our admin adding it.
Yeah, and I don't believe I ever received anything from her, which is fine.
Well, Nick is definitely present tonight.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah.
I've got it calling on my computer and phone just so I can have video and also use my screen here. So that's why there's the third Nick. Is that?
Okay, and then I believe Mark Donahue also has your link, Nick. So we'll have another Nick joining shortly here, I'm assuming.
Temporarily, you guys could all go by Nick just to make it easy. That'd be...
Whatever works, whatever is easier.
Yeah, so I'm going to check in on, just because if your links didn't work, and I'm not seeing our SARC members present yet, I'm just going to double check on the Zoom invitations, make sure everything's the way it should be.
Okay.
Hi guys, this is Ryan. I'm actually the IT. I'm hosting it. There is a way you could rename those names now. So if you guys want to rename your names or whatever is popping up, so go ahead and you can do that.
Sure. How do we do that?
So just click on participants.
Okay.
And then just click on, I guess.
Okay. Got it. Yep.
Hey, Ryan, can you do me one more? Okay, good. We're being joined by our commissioner. Never mind.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Good to
Good
have
evening.
you.
Hey, Maggie.
Hi, how are you, Stuart?
Yeah, good, thanks. How about yourself? I haven't seen
Doing
you for a couple of weeks. You been okay?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Thanks for your email. Appreciated that.
Never know with C19, do you?
What?
Never know with COVID, right? If people get the bug.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that. How's everybody else doing?
Good. We're working on renaming some of our applicants right now. So we have a few too many Nick Leons. We can go ahead and get started once we. So who's the last? So Nick, I see you. Do you know who the last one is? Is that
That might be Jason Check on the line.
Yeah, that's me, Al.
Okay.
So Jason, if you just right-click your name on the participant list, evidently you can rename yourself on the fly.
Will do.
And our architect can do the same. If you just want to have your name not appear under Nick, you can just right-click your name and you can relabel yourself. But with that, we got everybody here that we were planning on having attend. So Stuart, do you want to kick us off, or?
I think Maggie's in charge.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Maggie Ostrowski. I'm the Vice Chair of the Planning Commission. And this is the Site and Architectural Review. And so Stuart and I are members of the Planning Commission, and this is pretty informal. The goal is to get a preliminary review and initial feedback before going in front of the full Planning Commission. And with that, I'll hand it over to Stephen.
And so we only have the one item on the agenda tonight. It's a light agenda, but it is kind of a big item. So with that, I'll go ahead and start to share my screen here. And yeah, I mean, so we've actually also been modifying our SARC presentation format just to kind of adapt to this new forum. So we've kind of transitioned to this PowerPoint format. I was kind of explaining to the team that historically we used to kind of just roll out the plans and kind of talk over the project and its details and kind of that more informal setting. But that said, thank you and good evening. And tonight's first item is the Franciscan Apartments. So the project site is a 6.5 net acre lot, which is located on the west side of Almarid Drive. It's north of Hamilton and south of David. The property is zoned R3. It's multifamily residential and has a high density residential general plan land use designation. The project site is bordered by commercial uses to the east and to the south and residential uses to the west and to the north. And as it stands right now, the project site is developed with a 180 unit apartment community, which goes by the Franciscan. So the applicant's request tonight is the first is for a site and architectural review permit, which would allow the addition of 60 new apartment units to an existing 180 unit apartment community. It would also allow for the alteration of existing building facades, which are those which are facing the street on David and on Almarid, which I'll talk about here in a minute. The project would also result in the construction of both at and below grade parking structure, as well as minor details of just adding a couple parking spaces on Almarid 3. And it also results in the removal and replacement of the existing leasing office and a couple amenities like the pool and spa, which are centrally located in the community right now. And they're going to be pretty much installing new ones, which are new and improved. The project, to accommodate the new building, the project does result in the removal of six on-site trees, none of which are protected species. Again, something I'll cover in a minute. And the project also entails a request for a density bonus, which will allow for a 19% increase in the allowable density, 35% to be exact, but of which 19% they're exercising. It also allows for a reduction in parking and consistent with state law, as well as 2 concessions and unlimited waivers, which we'll talk about in a minute. So just for some background, in 2017, so going back a couple of years now, we had actually, the Planning Commission had received a pre-application request, just really providing an introduction of a new 3-story apartment building at the site. On the screen on the right, we actually see the massing study exhibits that have been provided to the Planning Commission at the time. So again, it was really conceptual in nature. And in response, and granted, the comments of the Planning Commission at the time are not binding. They were just trying to provide some just general feedback of the project. It was generally supportive is what I was gathering. And that, but they wanted to make sure that the future project would ensure connectivity through the site. We also wanted to make sure that it was avoiding impacts to the single-family residences to the west, which are probably the most impacted properties, with an emphasis on privacy. And then lastly, we had this whole conversation about whether or not, when we're introducing a new building to an existing community, should we carry facade improvements? Because recognizing this is going to be a new building, right? There's a concern of should all of the buildings, like what we'll typically do is we'll treat all of the buildings, make sure that they all kind of have this cohesive look and feel, or should we just really focus on the facade of the buildings which are facing the street? And the direction for the Planning Commission at the time was we should, you know, in consideration of costs and consideration that we're just really just trying to tie it in, that we should focus on the part which is visible to the community. So it's really the touch-up work is on David and on Almarid for those existing buildings. So just in terms of, there's been a bunch of new laws. We really haven't, as a group, talked about the Housing Accountability Act all that much, but I kind of wanted to touch on it and maybe lay out a few ground rules on how those laws apply to this type of project, because it is a housing project and it does involve more than one unit. And really, in order for cities are increasingly losing control over the ability to deny projects in the way that we used to. So we're having to change the way that we regulate and control projects. So we're actually in the process right now of developing objective development standards. It's actually going to be coming up on an upcoming planning commission meeting. We'll have a conversation about that. But in the meanwhile, it's important to keep in mind that cities really cannot deny a project unless it's found to be in violation of a general plan or zoning standard, an objective one, no less, or if it's found to result in a specific adverse impact to public health and safety. So in consideration of this, what we're really saying is, although the SARC is still empowered to recommend changes and still recommend alterations, those changes, we have to be sensitive to the fact that they can't render the project infeasible, and they also can't have the material impact of reducing the density of the project. And in the report, I provided a singular examples, like, for instance, if we don't have a policy regulating the color of the building, we can't deny it based on its color. But we certainly could condition the project's approval on the basis that we do change the color of the building. If you felt as if a different color was more appropriate or further to particular general plan policy goals or strategies.
Hold on a second. Sorry, Stephen.
So that's kind of the Housing Accountability Act in a nutshell. As a somewhat related point, we also do have, this project is requesting a density bonus, and under that, it will qualify for an up to 35% bonus, of which they're only using 19% to achieve the additional 60 units that they're adding. As part of that, they also get a reduced parking standard in exchange for providing 11% of the total units as affordable. And under the density bonus law, they also qualify for 2 concessions and unlimited waivers. And just in short, what a concession is they can kind of get their pick, so long as these standards actually do have a tangible impact to ensuring the project's feasibility. They pick 2 standards which they don't want to follow of our code, really. There is a benchmark of, they can't just ask for a 10,000 foot tall building. It would have to actually tie back to the affordability of the project, but these are the 2 that they've requested. So it's really the setback between non-accessory buildings. The city has a standard which says, even within a project site. So normally we're typically thinking about setbacks in relation to adjoining properties. We also have a setback when you're placing multiple primary buildings on a single lot, which requires you to separate the 2 by the taller of the 2 structures. So they've effectively, they will not be satisfying that standard, and they've asked for a concession to waive it or to eliminate it. The same goes for reduction in open space requirements. We have very high open space standards. And although this project will be providing a number of new amenity areas, a pool, spa, club room, and the like, they've asked to wait to a concession to reduce the technical requirement there. Now, separately, they've asked.
Hi, Stephen. Sorry, while we're on the concessions, what's the actual difference between what we require as a setback and the concession that's been made? And also a similar question on concession 2, what would be the open space requirement versus what was the open space impact of making this concession?
That's fair. So in the project data, and I actually have a slide. I'm not going to jump to it right now, but what I'll do is I'll just give you the salient points. So for the setback between non-accessory structures, it's the taller of the 2 buildings. So I believe that the building's 30, let's check here. Building height is 38 feet tall at its tallest point. There are parts between this building and the existing 2-story apartment buildings, which you'll find are like 11 feet in separation, maybe even tighter in some areas. So typically you would need to provide a 38-foot separation between those two buildings. It was a 38-foot tall building, and they're providing less. It's going to be like 11 feet or somewhere in that range. I don't have that specific number. We could jump to the plans if you'd like. And then separately, the reduction in open space requirements. They are proposing 38,000 square feet, almost closer to 39,000 square feet in open space, where they would otherwise be required to provide 72,000 square feet in open space. So it's a little bit more than half is what they're providing of what the code would otherwise dictate. And again, these are concession requests, so the density bonus just grants these. These are just part of the incentives under state law that encourage them to provide greater affordability. They're pretty much given these. Similarly, if there is a standard in our code which would have the material impact of, again, precluding the project, really rendering it infeasible or not able to be built or developed, those standards constitute waiver requests. So and the best way I can really describe this is that we have like a 1970s zoning ordinance in a lot of ways. We have a rather old code, and when we established a lot of our development standards like floor area ratio, lot coverage, setbacks, they had anticipated that this is all written long before there were density bonus standards. So once you apply a density bonus to a project, right, the numbers, they don't exactly track. I'll give you a good example. Let's say the site is 10,000 square feet and you're allowed to have 45% floor area ratio. That'll get you a 4,500 square foot building, 4,500. Now, if you suddenly add density to that site and now you're allowed to build 30 units on that same site, each unit is now like 900 square feet that you're getting per unit. And that we didn't really scale proportionally as the density of the project goes up. The same in the two standards where this really is emphasized is like floor area ratio and lot coverage, because you're adding units. Now these units are actually smaller than the existing that they're proposing to add, are actually smaller than the existing units in the site relative to their bedroom sizes. But even despite that, they can't. I mean, if you add enough units to the site, eventually we're going to breach these two standards, floor area ratio and lot coverage. And so those have been looked at by staff as well as the city attorney's office and found to be appropriate based on the request and the amount of density increase that they've asked for. So that's really kind of the difference between the two. So hopefully
thank you for that.
Just big picture wise, in terms of site layout, again, they are dropping this new 60 unit, 3-story tall apartment building centrally located in the complex. So really this is the 3-story tall component, which is towards the back. It's attached by like a bridge. I believe it's on the 2nd floor. It's kind of like a sky bridge to the amenity building, which is actually 2 stories. So from the streetscape, the building will more or less appear 2-story, kind of consistent, and then kind of tucked behind that, you'll have the 3-story apartment building behind. Now, the site currently served by 3 driveways. So you have one over here on David. You have one fronting on Almarid and one over closer. And I've kind of got the pictures of people over here, but I think I'm indicating roughly in the right location over here. The 3rd driveway to get in. So the majority of parking to the site, like where the residents are entering and exiting, is remaining unchanged. That's the 2 major entry points on David and on Almarid. This little parking lot in the front used to be bigger under the original conditions, and under the new conditions, it's still going to be for like guest parking. Somebody who's maybe interested in leasing an apartment in this community could pull into one of the 2 guest parking spaces. There's also accessible parking spaces in the front, and could walk into the leasing office and talk to the leasing office staff. Materially, I mean, this is an area we're not removing any of the existing apartment buildings. What we're removing is the leasing office and the amenity areas. So by design, we're getting close to, but we're not directly impacting or removing any of these existing buildings. There are parts of the buildings which I believe are being shaved off, which are more or less like storage or amenity areas, but we're not losing any units.
And where is the rooftop deck on this plan?
You know, I actually have a slide on this plan. So you actually have 2 rooftop decks. There's one that's over on top of the amenity building here. And there's another one that's kind of tucked in the corner right about here, if you see where my mouse is.
Yep.
So there's one right here. And I've got another slide, which we'll touch on privacy here in a minute, that actually does that better justice.
Okay, thank you.
Before I get into more about the architecture design, I just want to mention that in order to kind of drop this building in the middle, we are removing, and you're seeing here that you've got the pool, you have these other little leasing office buildings, and you also have a fitness room. These buildings are going away. So is the larger surface level parking lot areas are going away, as well as 6 trees. Now, as previously mentioned, these aren't protected tree species. You're kind of seeing them over here on the left. You have magnolia trees and palm trees. And you also have kind of like a multi-trunk cluster tree. And although the project is proposing a kind of more or less a comprehensive landscaping plan, they'll be adding a lot of additional trees to the property within this exact boundary. It's kind of what I wanted this exhibit to focus on was, okay, where we're removing the urban canopy of trees, where we're removing these trees, what are we going to get in that same zone? In that same zone, there would be adding back 11 trees or 17 trees, or a net increase of 11 within that boundary area. So again, and there's far more trees that they're adding project site wide. I think it's like in the 90s. So that said, I mean, now to talk about a little bit about the architecture. This is going to be a new building, so it is going to look distinct from the existing, but you can see that they've made a lot of design choices to try to tie it in using similar stucco colors, similar roofing colors, similar styles. But it is going to look distinct, and we hired a consulting architect who's kind of picked up on a few points, which I'll touch on again in a minute. You have this existing kind of S curve tile, the existing barrel clay tile, and it's going to be kind of a smooth roofing in these areas. And to kind of tie in the new building with the existing two-story buildings, we've kind of proposed this this board and batten siding on the sides, which would kind of fill in some of these nooks. They're kind of little recessed elements of the existing two-story buildings. And this treatment would really be applied consistently across all of the two-story buildings which are facing Almarid, with the exception of one which is facing the side of David, which we'll get to. Get caught up to my notes here. 1 second. So I had mentioned I had a better exhibit that covered privacy, and this is really it. Well, you know, internal compatibility of this project. I'll go back a slide. While internal compatibility of this building with the existing apartment community is important, it's also important that we consider the impact that it will have to the greater community. And one of the impact areas which the Planning Commission previously identified was the impact of these existing single-family homes to the west. What this exhibit down here is actually showing is the relative distance of the new 3-story apartment building relative to those existing single-family homes. Again, to the west, it's separated by a little bit over 44 feet, nearly 45, as well as a row of carports, and you have the drive aisle in the middle. This portion of the building, I guess I can't highlight my screen here. This portion of the building here is that the part of the building which is closest. So these are the windows which would immediately be visible to those single-family homes. And again, they did consider privacy in this design, and so all these balconies and roof decks, they're kind of located far and away from the residential uses to the west. In fact, neither of them will have a direct line of sight on those residential uses. So this is in the pink here is the balcony at the 3rd floor on the new residential building, and you have a new rooftop deck which would mostly have a view of the commercial properties across the street now, Marita Drive. So these are the new rooftop balcony areas. Again, understand this is kind of a big project. The city had ended up hiring a consulting architect. So the city architect took a look at it just to provide a kind of a third-party opinion of how successful this project has been in trying to be consistent with city's, you know, somewhat subjective policy language and guidance. Some of the things that the consulting architect had picked up on was that the proposed wood siding, in his opinion, doesn't fit in well with the architectural style of existing buildings. And he felt as if the SARC and Planning Commission by extension should consider maybe a different paint color, or the addition of some ceramic tile or other form of wall embellishment without really getting into specifics. The idea here is maybe there's some other way than this wood siding to kind of tie the project together. Maybe it's wrought iron, decorative elements, maybe do things elsewhere on the buildings to kind of make them look similar. Separately, he picked up on the fact that the proposed windows are a little bit more vertical in nature as opposed to horizontal, and was questioning whether or not these windows should look more consistent, recognizing you're not going to get something that's going to be a total match, but should they be looking at a more of a consistent at least shape or form for the windows. And then lastly, just picking up that this building is more contemporary in nature. It's got a different kind of roof pitch. It's got different window style, and as well as different deck railings along the edges, and whether or not some of those elements should be tied in or look consistent. And then lastly, as previously mentioned, we were going around the whole perimeter of the site trying to make it look consistent. And this type of facade treatment would be applied to all those existing 2-story buildings. There's one building, which is building A, which is kind of you have a dead wall of that building, which is facing David Avenue. It's kind of an unfortunate design choice of our predecessors here, but Our architect was pretty much saying that there might be a way to soften the appearance of this unarticulated wall. Maybe it's adding new trees, or maybe some type of embellishment, or doing something to this building, just to kind of improve its aesthetic from the street. So with that, and really in consideration of all the comments, I know I've already been long-winded enough, and I kind of want to leave plenty of time for discussion, which I'm kind of cutting into now. I just raised a couple points on the screen. These were just kind of picked from points that the architect had raised, but I'm interested to hear what the SARC has to comment, or what your feelings are in the project as well. And really, the three I picked up on was the roof design. Should the applicant lower the roof slope and try to match this kind of existing older buildings? Materials, should we make any material changes? And lastly, should we do anything about building A, adding trees or adding embellishments to the building? And with that, I'll turn it back over to the SARC.
Thanks, Stephen. That was a really nice report. I was curious, what aspect of the current existing style, architectural style, did the consultant feel did not match the wood siding?
You know, again, he's just providing his opinion. I believe that we attached his report, but he didn't actually specify, like going so far as saying, you know, it's a Spanish architecture style, and that wood siding is not traditionally associated with a Spanish look or style. If I were to surmise where he was coming from, that might have been it, but he didn't actually articulate it in his
Okay.
letter.
I was wondering if you had any more insight on that. Thanks. Well, I can give my my feedback on this. I think, you know, overall it's a really nice project. I think that the design is a modern design, and it's nice to be able to move forward with the design and not be anchored to an existing older type of design. So I tend to prefer to move kind of forward in trends that way. So, you know, I think I prefer the wood siding look that that you guys have put forth in this design, as opposed to trying to really go backwards and match it with what's existing by, you know, different colors of stucco and whatnot. So I would stick with the wood, and I do agree that it would be nice to add some trees on David Drive, just to add some more greenery and get rid of that wall that's there. In terms of the roof pitch, I'm a bit neutral on that. It might be nice. It would lower the height of the building just slightly, reduce mass slightly, and, you know, at least add that element that would match it with the existing roof, even though the materials are slightly different. They look like they might be the same color, so that's probably close. And I feel that, you know, when the whole thing is put together, I don't think it's going to be very, I mean, it's going to be a nice new building. I don't think the fact that the roofing materials are a bit different is going to stand out too much when people look at it. So also happy that the privacy impacts of those roof decks had been considered. I think roof decks are great when they don't impact privacy. It's a nice place for people to go and get outside and, you know, find a different space. So that's a positive, and it's great that you were able to, you know, rebuild the pool for the tenants. I'm sure they're going to really appreciate that. So that's really great as well. And I know when we had the Planning Commission review this, there were concerns from the neighbors about the height of the building. So it's nice that it's not, you know, it's quite a bit apart from the single family homes in the back. So I want to thank you for being thoughtful about that as well. I did have one question, which was, where are the trash enclosures located on the property, or the new trash enclosures, I should say, and how is that being handled?
I do want to give the applicant an opportunity to speak as well, and we can invite him. They are building a new trash room into the new building on the back. That would be, I could hop to the site plan, maybe showing that.
I saw that. I was just curious, is that how those are just going to be where the tenants bring their trash, and then how is that taken? Is there, like, how is the trash truck gonna?
So I can actually defer to Mark Donahue on that. So he's the project architect designer. Mark, do you want to jump in?
Sure, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for your time this evening. So indeed, the trash will be delivered by the tenants and stored in the trash room that's shown on the plans.
Yep.
And then the pickup is that the trash collection, they'll come and they'll wheel the containers out and the truck will load them in, and then they'll push the empty containers back into the room. So the circulation there, the road at that perimeter would also be the service road. And that's generally how they handle the trash on the site. They drive up, they load it in and put it in the truck, and then they drive on to the next enclosure. So the main difference is that we're replacing what was a open air, if you will, trash enclosure with room. And of course, we'll have all the mechanical equipment and required cleaning equipment as well.
That's great. And it's
And Maggie, just to
like
follow
the
up
trash
on that.
truck would just go one way, right? So it's not going to be backing up and beeping
Right.
to the residents.
Right. I think that actually it's probably a little bit narrow for them to back up, but I will defer to the project property management team to talk about how that actually takes place. I think it's probably one way right now, just by dint of the size of the lane.
Yeah, and I was going to follow up. The location of the trash room is still in the same location as where the trash enclosure is today. So the programming should not change.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, those were the comments that I had. Stuart, you have some comments?
Yeah, sure. So I'll echo a lot of what Maggie said. I think it's a really nice development. I personally like the contemporary style. I like the wooden siding treatment on it. Similar to, again, to Maggie's comments, I'd rather move forward than be stuck in 30 years ago. So I think and that's the same with the treatment of the roofing and the different type of smooth tile rather than the type of ridge tile. So aesthetically, I think it looks really nice, including the windows. The side which backs onto David, again, similar comments. I don't know if there's some options on there to soften that and add a couple of trees, I think that would be very welcome. It is a bit standoutish, old type of 70s styling. I did have a concern or question on Stephen. I wonder if you could put the plan up, please.
Is there a particular sheet that you're looking for?
From I guess the plan view looking down.
The side view?
Yeah, so it's in relation to the existing buildings there and the ones that I think are to the south or north. That's the one. Mm-hmm. So the ones on my screen which are to the right, so is that the south? Where you've got your little hand.
Correct.
That's right.
That's it. So I guess they're going to be impacted because it's pretty open plan at the moment because it's basically the pool and the leasing office and things like that. And now there's going to be a 3-story building there. So I would have thought they're going to be the most highly impacted in the fact that they're going to have a building right opposite them and they face onto it so that they've got balconies there. So they're going to be in shadow most of the time.
Well, actually, one of the things we have working for us is that because they are south of the building, except for early morning and late evening during the summer months, the sun will always be coming from the right-hand side of the frame, and in fact will bounce off of the 3-story building into their patios.
Right. Okay. And then if that's south east, is it? It'd be a similar type of thing to the top of my plan. Right.
It's over here. I mean, we have some height. I mean, this is a 2-story interface, and what you see here is a measurement I had done. It's kind of showing what I believe one of the tightest points was, and that's that separation between buildings requirement we typically have. And yeah, over here you kind of have the same type of interface.
Right. And we were careful to where the buildings are proximate. The sides of one building or the other are generally free of windows, and so you don't have neighbors looking into each other's windows. So, for example, near the amenity building, the building immediately to the north, that's 9.7 or 10 feet away, that side of the building is blank. And so really it's a backdrop for the leasing office and the roof deck. And then likewise, the building to the north of the main wing there, building B, that is where we're going to be moving a utility room, and that side is also blank.
Yeah, so like the building we've seen on David that's facing the street there, it's a big solid stucco wall. That's the side of these buildings. There's no windows on the sides in these areas. Where you would have windows and front doors is really this building C, I guess we're identifying here.
Right,
Yeah.
and then it's the
And then-
inverse condition where the side of our building is generally blank.
Right.
And building A as well, there'll be overlap. So
Yes, we'll
how
have
does
the pool view.
Yeah. So will the people at the pool level or above, will they be able to view straight into building A, through the windows on that?
This is kind of that pool view.
Okay. So it's the first. Yeah. That helps.
And then we do have a required fence height there, which it's a 6-foot fence that's on top of a 3-foot wall. And that will provide somewhat a visual barrier, except when you're looking straight on. But in general, it's at ground level.
Okay. And in terms of, at the moment, we haven't had any feedback from the neighbours. I assume there would sound like there was original concern from the neighbours on privacy when it was heard in 2017.
In recent times, I haven't had any recent correspondence from the public on this particular permit. As we're seeing, even for this item, we don't have any members in attendance.
Yeah.
We will do another 300-foot notice and a legal notice as part of our upcoming planning commission meeting, so we might receive some more feedback between now and then. But as it stands right now, it's been more or less quiet since the pre-app.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's all the questions I've got, but say echo Maggie's view, it's a very nice development.
Thank you.
The team, Alan, if there's anything you want to add or anyone else on the team wants to add about the project in general, just some insights or just based on what you heard tonight, anything you want to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Do appreciate both of you guys taking the time out to speak to us today about our project. We are very excited to bring you housing to the city of Campbell. I think both of your feedback was kind of exactly the same as the feedback both me, Mark, and Nick had. We did like the progressive nature of the architect design. We thought that, to Maggie's point, that we should be moving forward with the design concepts. The pitch of the roof, that's something that we are open to. And also, I believe adding those trees along David, along the north property line, is probably something worth considering. So, we do agree with both of your comments and, are excited that, our interests are in line. So appreciate the time again. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right, well, I got some great feedback tonight and I've taken notes. And if anyone else has anything else to add, otherwise, that's our first and only item.
Great.
All right.
Thanks,
An
Stephen.
early
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Okay, thanks everybody.
See you at
Thank
the
you.
Thank you
planning
very
commission.
much.
Have a good evening.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. You too.